the second, I think what we are having right now, there is ongoing genocide. They spoke about peace, they spoke about ceasefire, but actually the genocide, the apartheid, the ethnic cleansing, with the conditions existing, makes definitely the crime going on. And the third point, it's related to the Convention of Prevention and Punishment of Genocide Crime. The title of the agreement itself shows in a clear-cut way the most important part of it, the prevention, not to have it. And most of the states, when they signed, they said, never again for this crime. So these three components, I think, makes much more important having this popular public tribunal for Palestine, for Gaza, and the fact that the genocide is still going on makes it unique and very special. We have serious problem related to the world legal system. We are aware and know that the ICJ issued 3 provisional measures decisions. And these 3 provisional measure decisions was simple, clear, and it was precisely allowing since January 2024 the humanitarian aid and the food supplies to go on to Gaza unconditionally. But actually since then, the famine is still going on, and this wasn't, implemented exactly like the 2 warrants issued against Netanyahu and Gallant from the ICC. After issuing it, some prime ministers in Europe and the President of the United States said these are irrelevant and Netanyahu, Gallant can come and visit and should be no consequence on that. And he was received as first-class visitor to the White House. It's unprecedented that wanted to ICC and somebody who is suspected of doing war crimes, he is received full-fledged at the White House, not once, not twice, even 3 times after that. And that showed how the West dealing with the issues related to Palestine and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And that make emphasis about the popular tribunal as such. I want to say for the first time ever, we have a clear-cut consensus among international human rights organizations, among the UN bodies, among the Palestinian human rights organizations and the Israeli human rights organizations about describing the situation and having the solid conclusions about what's going on and describe in very detailed and precise words that what's going on, it's a genocide against the Palestinian people. So the problem, it's not at all related to how we describe really what's going on, what's the legal definition of what's going on, or what we are having as concrete evidence related to the situation in the Gaza Strip. Facts, standards, conclusions are simple, direct, and clear. The problem it's with the political will. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict didn't begin October 7th. Long history before that. The short version, 58 years since the occupation began, and the long version since the Nakba in 1948. And the Israeli crimes evident and clear before October 7th. They are occupying power, and the occupation by itself a crime of aggression as it defined in the ICC Rome Statute. Two, we are having also the blockade on Gaza. We have the settlements policy in the West Bank. We have the ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem. We are having the pillage in the West Bank. We are having, beside the blockade, 5 wars launched against Gaza in the eye of the storm, were civilian and the civilian targets. So before the war, Israel was there in the ICC, and Palestine began to engage with the ICC since January 2015. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is one of the most well-documented conflicts in the modern history. It's clear, simple, evident, and what's like there, not related to, again, facts or standards or the conclusions. It's related to the political will. Most recently, we have had something called Trump plan. Nobody wants peace, security, ceasefire more than the suppressed and the oppressed. Nobody need that more than the Gazans and Palestinians, those who are subject to massive destruction, massive displacement, massive killing, and famine. They want that badly. They seek to have it, but unfortunately, this came as just declaration of ceasefire. But how can we talk about peace while 90% of Gaza erased and destroyed, while almost 2 million displaced in Gaza, while still the famine all over the place, while there are lack of the basic, very fundamental issues like water, healthcare, hospitals, medicine, food, etc. So the current situation in Gaza, making genocide going on, making ethnic cleansing going on, without horizon, without agreement about ending the occupation, without agreement on having the Palestinians the right of self-determination, to achieve their unalienable rights of the Palestinian people, without having justice, dignity, and accountability for the criminals who committed these things. It's very hard to speak about peace. The word peace, yet, it's a word used as mirage. It's not reality on the ground. What is going on till this moment, ongoing genocide, ongoing ethnic cleansing for the Palestinian people. Only, Palestinian people can enjoy the peace when they achieve, their right of self-determination and independence and ending the occupation. When they feel the genocider and those who practice the war crimes, the crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing has been held accountable. I think with what's going on, it's very hard to see horizon for that. That's why it's very and vitally important to keep the popular tribunal on Gaza and to keep such work, because it's obvious yet the US and Western European countries at large is still in clear-cut support for the occupation, still recognize Israel's right of self-defense, and they are the victim, not the victimizers, and still, I mean, don't recognize the full political right of the Palestinian people of self-determination and independence and having justice and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sourani. And for those who were not able to be here physically or make a video, they did send us a message so that words can be heard. Arundhati Roy says, I'm sorry that I cannot be present at the final session of the Gaza Tribunal, so I thought I would at least send a brief message. Today is the 12th of October, and Israel's live-streamed genocide of Palestinians is just over 2 years old. Despite being armed and supported by the richest countries in the world, it has not succeeded militarily in its stated aim of wiping out Hamas as retribution for its October 7th attack on Israel. Instead, it has killed almost 70,000 people who were part of the tiny, encircled, occupied, and isolated population of Gaza. The final death toll will only be known once the thousands of tons of rubble has been cleared. Days ago, a ceasefire was brokered by the government of the United States, which, according to its own State Department, has given $40 billion over the last 2 years to support Israel as it went about its hard task of murdering tens of thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, bombing 90% of Gaza's dwellings to rubble, destroying hospitals, and killing hundreds of journalists. Could Israel have done this without the support of the governments of the United States and Europe? Very unlikely. Certainly, the United States could have stopped the killing in an afternoon if it wanted to. So the question is, whose genocide is it, and who should be held accountable? It is hard to know at this point whether the ceasefire will hold, or whether it is yet another deadly, cunning trick. For the sake of the people of Gaza, I fervently wish that it will hold, even if it is a ceasefire that is designed to disguise a real estate deal that will profit a group of war criminals. For now, the killing must stop. If it does, perhaps this tribunal could hold a special session right amidst the rubble of what Gaza once was, where Palestinians will describe what they have endured and share their dreams for their future. Perhaps only then will we have the full measure of the honor and the horror that unfolded while the murderers were applauded and urged on. But until then, the task of keeping track, naming names, collating evidence will be a work in progress. The perpetrators are not only those who pulled the triggers and dropped the bombs, not only those governments officials who have driven Palestinians off their lands and to the brink of starvation and mass, not only those who have used food and aid as a ruse to murder more people, not only those who have tortured and sexually abused Palestinian prisoners, but also those governments and corporations who have supported all of this. Also those mainstream newspaper and TV channels that have willfully lied and spread fake news. Also those editors, columnists, and journalists who developed a sophisticated slanted language that dehumanized Palestinians and prepared the grounds for genocide with impunity. All these people and organizations will, I'm sure, one day be named and indicted. The task of defining who is the perpetrator and then bringing them to account is an onerous one. We need a genocide audit. I'm sure the Gaza Tribunal is fully cognizant of all of this. which is why your work is both urgent and necessary. So that was Arundhati Roy. And now we will see a video message of Marcia Cross.
For the past 2 years, we've been witnessing a genocide. The deliberate destruction of a people and their land in full view of the world. Every day has brought new evidence, entire families wiped out, people buried under rubble, children shot by snipers or blown to bits, their parents forced to pick up remains of their tiny bodies and put them into plastic bags. Neighborhoods have been flattened. In fact, 85% of all of Gaza has been decimated. Hospitals and their heroic doctors obliterated or taken hostage, and the list goes on and on. With the international community unable or unwilling to stop it, the legal and political systems designed to protect life have failed. International law, the very architecture meant to safeguard our common humanity, has been paralyzed by politics, by double standards, and by men who lack any conscience, who are in power with stockpiles of bombs at their disposal. And laughter, used to describe the use of newer and specialty weapons, asked for, given to, and used on the Palestinian people. In this vacuum of justice, the Gaza Tribunal was born, a moral court created by civil society to document the truth, to preserve evidence, to hold power accountable when official institutions refuse to do so or are unable to do so. My own awareness of the situation in Gaza happened in the summer of 2014. My daughters were 7 years old, and we were on a family road trip through the national parks. I would lie in the back seat of our SUV to avoid being car sick and scroll through my phone to pass the time between our stops. And randomly, I came across a post about Gaza. And until then, I knew almost nothing about Palestine and Israel. I just thought it was a place that was far away, and I was told it was beautiful and that I should visit it. I thought maybe I would one day. But then I started reading, and I couldn't look away. The number of Palestinians being killed was absolutely horrifying. There seemed to be no number that would satisfy the Israeli government in their retaliation. And I later realized that this was one of many, many battles, if you want to call them that. This one was called Operation Protective Edge. And I thought I needed to know more, so I began listening to Israeli soldiers from breaking the silence, speaking about the occupation and about checkpoints and about raids that terrorized citizens, waking them up in the middle of the night, taking over their homes. And I watched documentaries, and I saw with utter horror what was happening in this conflict that we were told was too complicated to understand. And I was horrified, but shamefully I went back to my life, raising children, caring for my family, and I looked away. And then came October 7th, and of course at first I reacted with horror at the attack, but I wasn't surprised. And soon the retaliation unfolded, and the threats to annihilate Gaza were openly declared, and I watched with terror, because I knew from what I had learned in the past that the reaction by Israel would be bad. And when the civilian death toll in Gaza doubled the Israeli losses on October 7th, well, I thought, well, this must be enough. I mean, surely this is going to stop. But it didn't stop. I kept going, and I was riddled with grief and panic, because I thought, who am I? Who am I if I stay silent? And who, of course, who would I have been at another time, in another place, when others were being annihilated and good people said nothing? I couldn't function. I couldn't live with myself. This was 2 weeks in. I had no idea it was going to last for 2 more years, maybe longer, God forbid. And so I wrote on my social feeds, ceasefire. And for that, like hundreds of others to come, I was accused of hate. Friends I'd known for decades suddenly saw me not as a fellow mother, not as a woman begging for the killing to stop, but as someone they believed hated Jews. I was shocked. I mean, how could this happen? I mean, what kind of conditioning leads someone to erase decades of friendship, knowing me, in just a moment? To believe that empathy for one people must mean hatred of another, or that it even had anything to do with their religion. I didn't care. I was dumbfounded. And then, after sitting with that pain, I understood something much deeper. That those reactions, they weren't spontaneous. They were the product of years and years of indoctrination, the belief planted young that everyone was out to get them, that criticism of a state is hatred of a people, and that those who demand justice or liberation are enemies. And even more to the point, that those others, those Palestinians, were animals, monsters, unworthy of empathy. And this is the soil in which dehumanization grows, the mental and moral ground that allows atrocities to continue unchecked. And that's why I'm here. Because my conscience, our conscience, cannot stop at sympathy. It has to move toward action. And the Gaza Tribunal is that action. It is the organized conscience of civil society, documenting, archiving, and exposing the crimes committed against the people of Gaza, including those that meet the legal definition of genocide. It exists because official systems have failed. It exists because silence, no, it's not an option. And it exists because truth, it must be recorded for the victims, so many victims, for history, and for the future. I'm inviting you to join this journey of conscience, to listen, to bear witness, to help amplify the truth. Please come to the final session of the Gaza Tribunal. It's taking place in Istanbul on October 23rd to the 26th, or you can follow online and stand with those who refuse to look away. Because as we see, justice is not inevitable. It must be willed into being through courage, through witness, through action, to help amplify the truth.
Thank you to Marcia Cross. And now we will hear a message from Omar Suleiman.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. First and foremost, I want to thank Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for the incredible work that's been done with this tribunal to establish the facts that have been so obvious to anyone that's been paying attention, even with the bare naked eye, that this genocide has been the most horrific of our lifetimes, and it's one that must be sufficiently recorded, and it's one that must be sufficiently stopped, met with action. And you cannot record enough of the facts on the ground in every single dimension of this genocide's undertaking, whether it be in the destruction of the healthcare system, whether it be in the destruction of the ecology of Gaza. All of it comes together and is absolutely important for us, critical for us, to record each and every single part of it, because the story of the Palestinian people has been a story of redemption, a story of renewal after the Nakba, after removal. And for over 7 decades, the people of Palestine have insisted that whether they live physically in their land of Palestine or whether they remain only as emotional and spiritual dwellers in their historic homeland, that they will not allow for anything that has been a part of them to be forgotten, and that they intend to renew and to restore and to maintain the legacies that have been passed down to us throughout generation. I want to share one thing which I think is extremely important for us as we are undertaking this exercise, that you can never assume that history is going to be recorded properly in the moment. You know, many times we think that because things are so obvious, we don't have to worry about losing them in that moment. But if we don't record the story now, then our children won't know how to tell it. So it's important to establish the facts on the ground now so that we can have immediate and urgent action. The Palestinian people have suffered for long enough. The people of Gaza have suffered for long enough. But it's important that the story is also preserved and told for generations to come, because it may be that there's another generation that will certainly need to build upon the restoration. That's assuming the best case scenario of what we are able to achieve together. And I have no doubt that with inspired action, with experts, with academics, with activists, with people of conscience and people of faith, that we will be able to achieve in our lifetime some of the most remarkable things that are necessary to reverse the course that the Palestinian people have been put on, unfortunately, through these acts of destruction and before genocide of apartheid. So thank you all very much for being a part of this tribunal, and I pray that the facts that have been established are the foundation for a better future for the Palestinian people and for people around the world that are suffering under the boots of oppression and colonization. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all.
And after Omar Suleimani, we will hear Roger Waters. He's also on the video.
My name is Roger Waters. We're all in Istanbul. I know you know that. Actually, I'm not in Istanbul. I did this last Monday. All right. Here we go. It is time to call a spade a spade. No more pussyfooting. Zionism is a failed ideology. A majority of ordinary people all over the world know that to be true. A majority of Jewish people all over the world know that to be true. Israel is a failed state. Any state that admits it has to commit genocide to survive has already failed. Ordinary people all over the world know this to be true. So, what to do? The so-called Trump peace plan is a bad joke. It openly and unashamedly denies the Palestinian people basic human rights. So what do you suggest, Roger? What's your peace plan? Well, sumud, steadfast perseverance in resistance to the occupation. We must keep on taking to the streets in our millions. We must keep on raising our voices. The sound of our choir needs to be so loud it pierces the palace walls. No king should be allowed to sit smiling on a throne soaked in the blood of our children. Yes, I'm talking about you, Mohammed bin Salman. I'm talking about you, Sisi, in Egypt. I'm talking about the Qatari and Jordanian royal families. I'm talking about the rulers of the Arab Emirates. I'm talking about everyone except our noble brothers and sisters, the Houthis in Yemen. Our final goal must be to turn back the clock 100 years to before the stain of Zionism blackened the land. We work towards a free, democratic Palestine from Lebanon in the north to Egypt in the south and from the River Jordan to the sea. And what becomes of Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and Trump and Starmer and Witkoff and Hegseth and Rubio and the rest of them? Well, that's for history to decide. Obviously, they deserve equal human rights, just like the rest of us. But their fate will lie in the hands of international law. We shall see. But that is the future. Will it ever be achieved? I hope so. Unfortunately, I don't have my crystal ball here with me today. What I do know is it won't happen overnight. We need to be realistic. We need a realistic first step. And that is why I am here today. Donald, pay attention. This is important. The realistic first step to which I refer is uniting for peace. I call upon all world leaders, but especially all the Arab leaders, to, for once, represent the will of your peoples and stand solidly behind Gustavo Petro and the people of Colombia in their call for a vote in an emergency session of the General Assembly. A vote to authorize the sending of a multinational United Nations peacekeeping force into Gaza and all the other occupied Palestinian territories to stop the Israeli genocide, to restore UNRWA in its great work of provision and aid to those beleaguered people, and to remove the illegal Israeli army of occupation. That is the first step we need. And Gustavo, my good friend, we, the people of the world, need that draft resolution on our desks first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you.